Wuthering Heights, by Emily Bronte. About the author. Emily Bronte, an influential author of the 19th century, is best known for her novel, Wuthering Heights, a classic work of English literature. The Bronte siblings included Maria, Elizabeth, Charlotte, Branwell, Emily, and Anne. The Bronte siblings were raised in a literary household and were encouraged to read and write from a young age. They created elaborate imaginary worlds and wrote stories set in them, an early exercise in storytelling that honed their creative talents. Emily, Charlotte, and Anne published poetry under male pseudonyms in 1846, receiving little recognition. Emily's contribution to the volume was modest, but her writing showed promise. Emily's greatest achievement, Wuthering Heights, was published in 1847 under the pseudonym Ellis Bell. The novel's intense narrative, complex characters, and exploration of themes such as passion, revenge, and the supernatural initially polarized critics and readers. It is now considered one of the greatest novels in English literature. Emily was known for her reclusive nature and strong independence, preferring the solitude of her home to socializing with others. Emily Bronte's writing remains influential and continues to be studied for its originality, poetic language, and profound psychological depth. Her only novel, Wuthering Heights, is now recognized as a pioneering work of Gothic fiction and a masterful exploration of human nature. Emily Bronte's health deteriorated in the winter of 1848, possibly due to tuberculosis. She passed away on December 19, 1848, at the age of 30. Significance of the title. The title of Emily Bronte's novel, Wuthering Heights, holds significant meaning and provides insight into the story's setting, atmosphere, and central themes. The title refers to the primary setting of the novel, a remote and imposing farmhouse situated on the wild Yorkshire moors. The name, Wuthering, suggests the tumultuous, stormy weather that characterizes the area and shapes the mood and events of the novel. Wuthering Heights is depicted as isolated and inhospitable, cut off from civilization and surrounded by bleak, windswept moors. This isolation plays a crucial role in the novel, influencing the characters' experiences and emotional states. The word, wuthering, evokes a sense of foreboding and haunting, reflecting the Gothic elements present throughout the novel. The turbulent weather and ominous environment create an atmosphere of tension and mystery. The harshness of the setting mirrors the conflict and struggles faced by the characters. The title encapsulates the turbulent relationships, intense emotions, and destructive passions that drive the narrative. The title alludes to the wild, untamed nature of the moors, which mirrors the intense and often destructive passions of the characters, particularly Heathcliff and Catherine. The natural world plays a central role in the novel, reflecting the internal conflicts of the characters. The wild and uncontrollable landscape of Wuthering Heights symbolizes the untamed emotions and struggles within the story. The title establishes the centrality of Wuthering Heights not only as a location but as a significant part of Heathcliff's identity. His character is deeply tied to the place, and his story is inextricably linked to the house and its history. The title contrasts with the other major setting in the novel, Thrushcross Grange, which represents order and civilization. This contrast highlights the differing influences of the two households on the characters' lives. The title's reference to the tumultuous weather and the imposing setting conveys a sense of foreboding and tragedy that permeates the novel. This contributes to the lasting impact and legacy of Wuthering Heights as a dark and intense work of literature. Overall, the title of Wuthering Heights is significant for its ability to encapsulate the novel's setting, atmosphere, and central themes. It sets the stage for the tumultuous and passionate story that follows, providing a foundation for the novel's exploration of human emotions, relationships, and struggles. Summary of the novel, Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights is a complex tale of passion, revenge, and the destructive power of love that transcends generations. Wuthering Heights is the only novel by the English author Emily Bronte, initially published in 1847 under her pen name, Alice Bell. It concerns two families of the landed gentry living on the West Yorkshire moors, the Earnshaws and the Lintons, and their turbulent relationships with the Earnshaws' foster son, Heathcliff. The novel was influenced by Romanticism and Gothic fiction. Wuthering Heights is now widely considered to be one of the greatest novels ever written in English, but contemporaneous reviews were polarized. It was controversial for its depictions of mental and physical cruelty, including domestic abuse, and for its challenges to Victorian morality, religion, and the class system. Wuthering Heights was accepted by publisher Thomas Newby along with Anne Bronte's Agnes Grey before the success of their sister Charlotte Bronte's novel Jane Eyre, but they were published later. After Emily's death, Charlotte edited a second edition of Wuthering Heights, which was published in 1850. It has inspired an array of adaptations across several media, including English singer-songwriter Kate Bush's song of the same name. The novel is set in the rugged moorland of Yorkshire in northern England during the late 18th and early 19th centuries. It begins with Mr. Lockwood, a gentleman from London who, seeking solitude, rents Thrushcross Grange. Curious about the nearby Wuthering Heights, he visits and encounters the mysterious and surly Heathcliff, the master of Wuthering Heights, whom he initially assumes as a reserved gentleman but soon discovers his savage nature. Lockwood is forced to spend a night at Wuthering Heights due to bad weather and experiences strange ghostly occurrences, including a dream where he encounters the ghost of Catherine Linton. Disturbed, he returns to Thrushcross Grange and asks his housekeeper, Nellie Dean, to tell him about the history of Wuthering Heights. Nellie's narrative forms the main body of the novel and recounts the life of Heathcliff from boyhood. Mr. Earnshaw, the previous owner of Wuthering Heights, brings Heathcliff, a foundling from Liverpool, into his family, treating him as one of his own children. This sparks bitter rivalry between Heathcliff and Earnshaw's biological son, Hindley. Despite Hindley's animosity, Heathcliff becomes close friends and later falls deeply in love with Earnshaw's daughter, Catherine. After Mr. Earnshaw's death, Hindley inherits Wuthering Heights and reduces Heathcliff to the status of a servant, mistreating him cruelly. Despite their deep affection for each other, Catherine is drawn to Edgar Linton, a more refined and wealthier neighbor from Thrushcross Grange. She decides to marry Edgar for his social status, believing it will help her aid Heathcliff, but this decision devastates Heathcliff, who leaves Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff returns years later, wealthy and now focused on revenge. He gambles with Hindley, who has descended into drunkenness and despair after his wife's death, and gradually gains control of Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff then courts Isabella, Edgar Linton's sister, only to torment her as revenge against Edgar. Catherine becomes ill and dies shortly after giving birth to a daughter, also named Catherine. Her death unhinges both Edgar and Heathcliff, with Heathcliff imploring her ghost to haunt him. Heathcliff's schemes continue as he forces his son, Linton Heathcliff, whom he had with Isabella, to marry young Catherine. This ensures that he controls both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange after Edgar's death. As the older generation passes away, the younger characters begin to form their own relationships free from the destructive influence of Heathcliff. Young Catherine and Hareton Earnshaw, Hindley's son, fall in love, restoring a sense of harmony and joy to Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff becomes increasingly obsessed with the afterlife, longing to reunite with Catherine. He dies, and Nellie reports that he is buried next to Catherine. The novel concludes with Mr. Lockwood leaving the area, having learned the entire tragic history. Nellie ends her tale with plans for young Catherine and Hareton's upcoming marriage, which promises a more hopeful future for the estates of Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. Throughout Wuthering Heights, Bronte explores themes of love, revenge, social class, and the supernatural, all woven into the dark, atmospheric setting of the Yorkshire moors. The novel's structure, which frames Nellie's story within Lockwood's, creates a multi-layered narrative that examines the impact of character and environment on destiny and desire. Critical analysis of the novel, Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights, published in 1847 under the pseudonym Ellis Bell, is the only novel written by Emily Bronte and is considered a classic of English literature. Its innovative structure, intricate narrative technique, and exploration of complex human emotions make it a pivotal work in the canon of Victorian literature. The novel is notable for its complex structure, employing two primary narrators, Mr. Lockwood and Nellie Dean. Lockwood, a tenant at Thrushcross Grange, recounts his interactions with the inhabitants of the neighboring Wuthering Heights and records Nellie Dean's detailed narration of the family's history. This layering of narratives creates a story within a story, distancing the reader from the central events and inviting skepticism about the narrator's reliability. This method allows Bronte to explore themes of memory and storytelling, questioning how stories are shaped by those who tell them. Heathcliff, the protagonist, drives the plot through his complex schemes of revenge against the families of Earnshaw and Linton. His relentless pursuit of vengeance against those he believes have wronged him explores the destructive power of obsession and raises questions about natural justice versus social justice. The central relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine Earnshaw transcends simple romantic love, veering into the realms of obsession and spiritual connection. Catherine's famous assertion that she is Heathcliff exemplifies their profound, if tumultuous, bond, suggesting a fusion of identities that challenges conventional understandings of love and marriage. Heathcliff's mistreatment due to his ambiguous social position and lack of family lineage highlights the rigid class structures of the time. His subsequent rise in social status and fall into emotional degradation mirrors Victorian anxieties about social mobility and the instability it could bring. The setting of the Yorkshire moors reflects the wild, untamed nature of the characters' passions. The frequent references to ghosts and the supernatural imbue the narrative with a Gothic atmosphere, while also suggesting the transgressive nature of Heathcliff and Catherine's relationship, which defies social and natural laws. The characters in Wuthering Heights are deeply flawed and human. Heathcliff, often considered the anti-hero, oscillates between eliciting sympathy and revulsion, challenging readers' moral judgments. Catherine, similarly, is portrayed with a complexity that defies the typical damsel or heroine trope, embodying both strength and vulnerability. Bronte's use of language in Wuthering Heights is dense and evocative, rich with imagery and symbolism. The elemental descriptions of the landscape mirror the tumultuous inner lives of the characters, and the dialogue sharply conveys the social and psychological undercurrents of the community. Joseph's broad Yorkshire dialect, for example, lends authenticity to the setting and emphasizes his role as part of the old, rural world. The dialect also serves to distance him from other characters and from the reader, underscoring the social divisions of the time. The novel is laden with symbols, the weather, dogs, the moors themselves, that reflect the inner states of the characters or predict future emotional conflicts. This symbolic language elevates the personal conflicts to a universal level, aligning the natural world with human emotions and actions. Initially, Wuthering Heights received mixed reviews, with many contemporary critics finding its dark themes and moral ambiguity troubling. Over time, however, the novel has been recognized for its deep psychological insight and its bold narrative style. It has inspired numerous adaptations in film, television, and literature, and continues to be a subject of scholarly study for its innovative approach to narrative and character development. Wuthering Heights, by Emily Bronte, while primarily a profound exploration of personal and emotional turmoil, is also deeply embedded in the social and political contexts of its time. The novel was written during the Victorian era, a period marked by rapid industrialization, strict social hierarchies, and evolving attitudes toward gender and class. The era was characterized by a rigid class system, and Wuthering Heights reflects this social structure through its characters' interactions and aspirations. Heathcliff's ambiguous social status as an orphan and presumed gypsy and his treatment by other characters is a central theme. His rise in social and economic status and subsequent revenge against the established families illustrate the tensions and anxieties surrounding social mobility in Victorian England. While the novel is set in the remote Yorkshire moors, the impact of the Industrial Revolution can be felt in the background. The economic shifts and the rise of a middle class are subtle undercurrents that influence the characters' interactions and the plot's development. The Earnshaws and Lintons, as landowners and gentry, represent an old order that is under threat from new money and new ways, epitomized by Heathcliff's acquired wealth and power. The portrayal of women in Wuthering Heights also speaks to the gender dynamics of the time. Catherine Earnshaw, for instance, struggles with her societal role and expectations as a woman, which conflict with her intense nature and desires. Victorian society had strict ideas about female behavior and propriety, which Catherine frequently defies, leading to her inner conflict and tragic end. The novel also reflects the Victorian conflict between the evangelical zeal and the more traditional, often harsher, Christian doctrine. Characters like Joseph, with his fire and brimstone religiosity, represent the old, punitive religious outlook, while the overall moral ambiguity of the novel, including the redemption or condemnation of characters like Heathcliff, engages with more contemporary debates about morality and justice. In conclusion, Wuthering Heights is a complex exploration of human emotions set against the backdrop of the natural and supernatural. Its rich, layered narrative and morally ambiguous characters offer a profound commentary on the nature of love, revenge, and societal constraints, securing Emily Bronte's place as a singular voice in English literature. Themes. Wuthering Heights, by Emily Bronte, is a richly complex narrative that explores several potent and often interwoven themes. Here's a detailed analysis of the major themes present in the novel. Love and passion. One of the most prominent themes in Wuthering Heights is the powerful, often destructive nature of love and passion. The love between Heathcliff and Catherine transcends conventional romantic love. It is portrayed as a profound, almost primal force that binds them beyond death. However, this love does not lead to happiness but rather brings about misery and vengeance. Their love is juxtaposed against the more serene and socially acceptable relationship between Catherine and Edgar Linton, which, while stable, lacks the intensity of her connection with Heathcliff. This theme challenges Victorian ideals about the nature and purpose of marriage and love, presenting a darker, more obsessive view of these concepts. Revenge and hatred. Heathcliff's character is driven by a relentless desire for revenge, which shapes the entire narrative structure of the novel. His need for vengeance is sparked by the humiliations he suffers at the hands of Hindley and the perceived betrayal by Catherine. This leads him to a path where his revenge consumes not only those who wronged him but also the next generation. Heathcliff's actions underscore the destructive nature of revenge, as almost every character suffers due to his unyielding quest to settle scores. Nature versus nurture. The theme of nature versus nurture plays a significant role in the development of the novel's characters. Heathcliff, brought up in a loving home by Mr. Earnshaw, initially shows the capacity to love deeply, but the abuse and degradation he faces at the hands of Hindley foster his darker traits. Bronte explores whether Heathcliff's brutal nature is innate or a result of the cruelty he endured during his formative years, thereby examining the impact of environment on a person's character. Social class and inequality. The social dynamics within the novel reflect the rigid class structure of the 18th and 19th centuries. Characters are often judged by their social standing and wealth, as seen in Catherine's decision to marry Edgar Linton instead of Heathcliff. Heathcliff's ascent from a destitute orphan to a wealthy gentleman highlights the fluidity of social mobility but also showcases the resentment and isolation that such a rise can provoke. The novel critiques the social hierarchy by showing how it can distort personal relationships and values. The supernatural. Ghosts and the supernatural are recurring motifs in Wuthering Heights, imbuing the story with a Gothic atmosphere. The appearances of Catherine's ghost reflect not only Heathcliff's profound grief and disturbed mind but also the idea that love and revenge are forces that can transcend death. The supernatural elements in the novel enhance the sense of foreboding and inevitability that pervades the narrative, suggesting that the fates of the characters are influenced by forces beyond their control. Isolation and the environment. The setting of the Yorkshire moors mirrors the isolated, turbulent lives of the characters. The harsh and wild landscape of Wuthering Heights contrasts with the calm and order of Thrushcross Grange, reflecting the inner turmoil of the characters and the conflicts in the plot. The environment in the novel not only shapes the characters' lives but also symbolizes their emotional states and the intense, often violent nature of their interactions. These themes contribute to the enduring appeal and literary richness of Wuthering Heights, making it a profound exploration of human emotions and motivations within the constraints of societal norms and personal afflictions. Characterization. Wuthering Heights, by Emily Bronte features a cast of complex characters, each deeply intertwined in a web of passion, revenge, and tragedy. Below is a detailed character analysis of the main figures in the novel. Heathcliff. Heathcliff is arguably the central character of the novel, embodying themes of love, revenge, and social mobility. Found on the streets of Liverpool and brought to Wuthering Heights by Mr. Earnshaw, Heathcliff is an enigmatic figure. He forms a deep, spiritual bond with Catherine Earnshaw, which becomes the driving force of his life. Heathcliff's love for Catherine transcends conventional romantic love, presenting as something much more profound and often destructive. After feeling betrayed by Catherine's marriage to Edgar Linton, Heathcliff embarks on a path of revenge that affects the lives of all the families involved. His character is complex. He is both a romantic hero and a villain. Heathcliff's actions are often cruel and malicious, yet he is also a victim of severe mistreatment due to his ambiguous ethnic origins and lack of social standing. He embodies the conflict between nature and nurture, as his brutal upbringing and constant humiliation twist his ability to love into a destructive force. Catherine Earnshaw. Catherine is a spirited and wild character, much like the moors on which she lives. Her personality is multifaceted. She is charming and wild, capable of deep love but also intensely selfish. Catherine's internal conflict between her passionate nature and the societal expectations placed upon her as a woman leads to much of the novel's tension. Her decision to marry Edgar Linton for his social status, despite her soul-deep connection to Heathcliff, creates a schism that propels much of the plot's tragedy. Catherine's love for Heathcliff remains a constant theme in the novel, highlighting Bronte's exploration of the destructiveness of thwarted desires and societal pressures. Edgar Linton. Edgar represents the cultured, refined, and civilized world of the Victorian middle class, contrasting sharply with the violent, passionate world of Heathcliff. Edgar is kind and loving but ultimately weak in comparison to Heathcliff's powerful personality. His marriage to Catherine brings temporary happiness but ultimately leads to misery due to Catherine's unresolved love for Heathcliff. Edgar's character highlights the limitations of gentility and decency against raw passion and ambition. Isabella Linton. Isabella starts as a naive and somewhat shallow character, infatuated with the romantic idea of Heathcliff. Her decision to elope with Heathcliff results in a cruel awakening as she faces the reality of his brutal nature and his undying love for Catherine. Her journey from innocence to disillusionment and eventual escape to raise her son, Linton Heathcliff, away from Wuthering Heights, illustrates the devastating impact of Heathcliff's revenge on innocent bystanders. Hindley Earnshaw. Hindley's trajectory is marked by jealousy, bitterness, and alcoholism. After his father brings Heathcliff into their home, Hindley instantly dislikes him. Once he inherits Wuthering Heights, he degrades Heathcliff to the status of a servant, setting off the chain of resentment and vengeance in Heathcliff. Hindley's eventual downfall into drunkenness and gambling, which leads to his premature death, shows the destructive impact of unchecked hatred and revenge. Young Catherine Linton. The daughter of Catherine and Edgar, young Catherine inherits her mother's beauty and spirited nature but is tempered by her father's gentleness. Her relationship with Linton Heathcliff is initially manipulated by Heathcliff as part of his revenge but later develops into a genuine connection with her cousin Hareton. Her story is one of growth and redemption, as she overcomes the legacy of conflict and hatred left by her parents and Heathcliff. Hareton Earnshaw. As Hindley's son, Hareton starts life with prospects but is reduced to a servant's status by Heathcliff's manipulation of Hindley. Despite his rough upbringing, Hareton retains a capacity for love and goodness. His eventual relationship with young Catherine symbolizes hope and the possibility of overcoming the cycle of vengeance and misery that defines much of the novel. These characters, with their intertwined destinies and emotional complexities, create a deep and enduring narrative that explores the darkest corners of human passion and the consequences of our choices. The novel's character dynamics effectively illustrate the themes of love, revenge, social inequality, and redemption, making Wuthering Heights a profound study of human nature and relationships. Q. 1. Discuss Emily Bronte's portrayal of religion in the novel, Wuthering Heights. Ans. Emily Bronte's portrayal of religion in Wuthering Heights is nuanced and subtle, often woven into the fabric of the narrative rather than explicitly discussed. The novel does not focus heavily on religion, but its influence and the moral framework it provides are evident in the characters' actions and the societal norms of the time. Religion in Wuthering Heights often appears in the context of moral judgment and the potential for redemption. Characters such as Joseph, the devout servant at Wuthering Heights, embody a stern, Old Testament type of religiosity that is more about judgment and condemnation than forgiveness and love. Joseph's character frequently quotes the Bible and uses religious rhetoric to judge the other characters, suggesting a harsh, punitive view of religion that offers little in the way of redemption or compassion. The concepts of heaven and hell play a significant psychological role in the novel. Heathcliff and Catherine, for example, often discuss their beliefs about the afterlife in ways that reveal their inner turmoil and fears. Catherine famously exclaims that she would be miserable in heaven if Heathcliff were not there, indicating that her spiritual beliefs are deeply entwined with her earthly passions and relationships. This blurring of spiritual and earthly concerns reflects Bronte's portrayal of a spirituality that is deeply personal and emotional, rather than traditionally doctrinal. Bronte subtly critiques the hypocrisy of social and religious mores through her characters' actions. The Lintons are portrayed as the epitome of Christian propriety, yet their kindness and morality are often shallow, extending only to those within their social circle. Edgar Linton, for instance, is a morally upright character, but he fails to comprehend or address the deeper emotional needs of his wife, Catherine. This contrast highlights a theme of superficial religiosity, where appearances of goodness mask a lack of true empathy or understanding. The novel also intersects with religious themes through its exploration of the supernatural, such as ghosts and premonitions, which are part of the local folklore and possibly counter to Orthodox Christian doctrine. The presence of ghosts and the idea of a love that transcends death suggest a belief system that is not strictly Christian but is more eclectic, drawing from a range of spiritual and superstitious sources. This can be seen as a critique of organized religion's inability to explain or contain the deeper, more mysterious human experiences that Bronte explores in her novel. Finally, the theme of suffering leading to redemption is prevalent in the transformations of characters like Hareton and young Catherine. Their ability to overcome the legacies of pain and revenge and find love and happiness with each other suggests a kind of moral and spiritual salvation that results from enduring and transcending suffering. This reflects a Christian narrative of redemption through suffering, though it is realized through human love and connection rather than divine intervention. Overall, Emily Bronte's portrayal of religion in Wuthering Heights is complex and critical. She uses religious elements to enhance her exploration of human passion, morality, and redemption, offering a deeply personal rather than institutional view of spirituality. Q2. What is Heathcliff's role in the story? Is he a protagonist or an antagonist? Ans. Heathcliff's role in Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights is complex and multifaceted, blending elements of both protagonist and antagonist in a way that defies simple categorization. His character is central to the narrative, driving much of the plot and providing the emotional core around which the other characters revolve. Analyzing Heathcliff's role involves considering both his influence on the story and the moral dimensions of his actions. Heathcliff is arguably the central figure in the novel, around whom most of the major events and conflicts revolve. His actions and reactions significantly shape the storyline. Initially, Heathcliff is portrayed sympathetically, as an orphan brought into the Earnshaw family, only to face rejection and humiliation, particularly from Hindley. His love for Catherine Earnshaw and his pain when she chooses to marry Edgar Linton evoke further sympathy. Heathcliff's deep passions and enduring love for Catherine provide a poignant emotional depth to the story. His feelings are portrayed with complexity, highlighting his capacity for both great love and great suffering. Heathcliff is also the source of much of the novel's conflict. His pursuit of revenge against those he believes have wronged him, including Hindley, Edgar Linton, and even Catherine to some extent, drives much of the plot's tension and misery. His actions often have malicious intent, aimed at causing pain and suffering to others. This includes manipulating the lives of the younger generation, such as Hareton Earnshaw and Cathy Linton, to exact vengeance. Unlike traditional protagonists who typically embody more clearly defined moral qualities, Heathcliff's character is morally ambiguous, often engaging in cruel and vindictive behavior that causes harm to almost every other character in the novel. The ambiguity of Heathcliff's role being both a victim and a perpetrator makes him a particularly modern character. His complexity reflects a departure from the more straightforward heroes and villains typical in earlier 19th-century literature. He embodies many qualities of the Byronic hero, including being dark, mysterious, brooding, and having a troubled past. These traits make him an attractive yet dangerous figure, drawing both empathy and repulsion from the reader. Through his actions, Heathcliff inadvertently forces other characters to confront their own values, desires, and weaknesses, acting as a catalyst for their development. In conclusion, Heathcliff's role cannot be neatly categorized as either purely protagonist or antagonist. He is both a driving force of the narrative protagonist, and a major source of its conflicts antagonist. This duality is part of what makes Wuthering Heights a rich and enduring work of literature, with Heathcliff as its most compelling and unforgettable character. Q3. Interpret the novel's dream sequences. Why are they important? Anne's dream sequences in Wuthering Heights play a significant role in exploring the subconscious desires, fears, and premonitions of the characters, particularly those of the narrator, Lockwood, and the central character, Catherine Earnshaw. Dreams in Wuthering Heights foreshadow future events, but they also reveal important information about the characters' current situations. These dreams serve several key functions in the novel, from foreshadowing future events to providing insight into the characters' inner lives. Lockwood's dream early in the novel is one of the most notable. He dreams of being chased by a religious procession after refusing to participate in their zealous religious services, which turns into a nightmare when he encounters Catherine Earnshaw's ghost. In his dream, he attempts to push the ghost away as it reaches through the window, crying out to be let in. This encounter foreshadows the turbulent emotions and events that will unfold as Lockwood learns more about the history of Wuthering Heights and its inhabitants. It introduces the element of the supernatural, which pervades the novel, suggesting the enduring and haunting nature of past deeds and emotions. The dream acts as a symbolic entry into the troubled psyche of the household, representing Lockwood's literal and metaphorical entry into the complexities of Wuthering Heights. It foreshadows the intense emotional and spiritual turmoil associated with Catherine and Heathcliff's relationship. Catherine describes a significant dream to Nellie Dean, recounting how she dreamt she was in heaven but did not feel at home there and threw herself down to earth to return to Wuthering Heights. It reveals Catherine's deep inner conflict between her social ambitions, represented by her marriage to Edgar Linton, and her passionate nature and love for Heathcliff. Catherine's feeling of displacement even in heaven underscores her intense connection to Wuthering Heights and Heathcliff, suggesting that her true sense of belonging is not in the civilized world of the Lintons but on the wild moors with Heathcliff. This dream also acts as a premonition of Catherine's ultimate fate, being torn between two worlds and never truly finding peace in either. The dreams provide a window into the subconscious of the characters, revealing truths that are not apparent in their waking lives. They add a layer of complexity to the narrative, allowing Bronte to explore themes of identity, belonging, and supernatural influence without direct exposition. Dreams in the novel often echo the intense emotions, love, fear, desire, and despair, that drive the character's actions and decisions. They amplify the gothic atmosphere of the novel, enhancing its themes of haunting pasts and the inescapable nature of certain fates. Overall, the dream sequences in Wuthering Heights enrich the narrative by providing psychological depth, foreshadowing critical developments, and contributing to the novel's eerie and foreboding atmosphere. They are key to understanding the inner workings of characters and the novel's exploration of themes such as identity, belonging, and the supernatural. Q. 4. Analyze the relationship between Lockwood and Heathcliff. Ans. The relationship between Lockwood and Heathcliff in Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights is one of complexity and tension, marked by contrasts in personality and social standing. Their interactions highlight key aspects of both characters and play an important role in the novel's structure, with Lockwood serving as the initial narrator of the story and Heathcliff as the central figure around whom the plot revolves. When Lockwood first encounters Heathcliff, he is intrigued by Heathcliff's mysterious and aloof demeanor. Lockwood is an outsider and views Heathcliff as a curious and somewhat enigmatic character. Lockwood initially misinterprets Heathcliff's stern and brooding behavior as the roughness of a typical Yorkshire farmer. His ignorance of the local context and history of Wuthering Heights leads to misunderstandings about Heathcliff's true nature. Lockwood is an educated gentleman from the city, seeking a quiet life in the country. In contrast, Heathcliff is a product of the wild moors, deeply connected to Wuthering Heights and its tumultuous history. Lockwood's mild-mannered and curious nature contrasts sharply with Heathcliff's intense and brooding personality. Lockwood's desire for peaceful solitude conflicts with Heathcliff's dark, passionate, and often violent world. Lockwood serves as a framing narrator, providing a fresh perspective on the story's events. His interactions with Heathcliff serve as an introduction to the world of Wuthering Heights and the complex web of relationships within it. Lockwood's interactions with Heathcliff spark his curiosity and drive him to learn more about the history of the families at Wuthering Heights. This sets the stage for the deeper narrative Lockwood discovers through Nellie Dean's recounting. From the outset, Lockwood senses an unfriendly atmosphere at Wuthering Heights, particularly when interacting with Heathcliff. Their exchanges are often curt and cold, emphasizing Heathcliff's hostility towards outsiders. Lockwood's stay at Wuthering Heights stirs the literal and figurative ghosts of the past, including the haunting of Catherine Earnshaw. This foreshadows the dark, tormented past that Heathcliff is connected to. Ultimately, Lockwood's relationship with Heathcliff leads him to realize that he does not belong in the world of Wuthering Heights. His decision to leave Thrushcross Grange and return to London indicates his inability to reconcile Heathcliff's world with his own ideals. Heathcliff's harsh treatment of Lockwood showcases his lack of empathy for others, reinforcing his character as a dark, almost unapproachable figure consumed by his own past and vendettas. Overall, the relationship between Lockwood and Heathcliff serves as a bridge between the reader and the world of Wuthering Heights, with Lockwood's outsider perspective providing insight into Heathcliff's enigmatic character. Their interactions reveal the stark contrast between Lockwood's civilized world and Heathcliff's untamed existence, setting the tone for the novel's exploration of passion, revenge, and the haunting legacies of the past.